We're going to just focus today on our breath and our breathing. This week, I've been noticing that I've been just trying to get really quiet and sit and still. And sometimes, even with the best intention, there's just a lot of stimulus going on. And so I want to allow us to just use our practice today to, as best as we can, sort of check in with what's happening on the inside. And so our big emphasis today is going to be on the breath. So please make sure you've got 2 blocks and a blanket. And we are going to start in child's pose. And personally, I've been enjoying having a blanket sit on top of my pelvis for child's pose. It just helps release my hip flexors. But if that's not something you wish to do, no worries. And then you'll just sort of fold over either your knees or your blanket. And the legs are, again, either as wide or as narrow as you'd like them to be. But you'll just come into child's pose. And we're going to take a few moments to just breathe here. So halfway through, you might decide that you want to change the position of your arms. You might start with the arms back alongside your hips and then reach them forward. Or you might start with them forward and then reach them back. But you'll just take a few moments to just settle. And one of the things that happens with that blanket there, if you're using it, is it creates just a little bit of pressure. And so I want you to just take the first few moments to just breathe into your belly and push the belly down into the thighs or down towards the floor. And so with every breath, you're just breathing into the belly, and the belly is moving away from the spine. And you might gradually begin to observe that as you start to breathe into the belly, it can send breath into the low back. You might even feel it go into the pelvis. And you're just really focusing on what it feels like to breathe into the belly. And we're at about the halfway mark here. So if breathing into the belly is really working for you, by all means, stay there. You might start to shift your awareness to breathing into the chest and really trying to press the chest away from the space behind your shoulders. And those of you whose arms are forward, notice what happens now if you start to walk the hands just a bit further forward. Maybe straightening the elbows and pushing the hands down and away from you, drawing the butt even further back. Seeing if breathing into the chest now allows breath to come into the upper back between the shoulder blades. And those of you with your arms that are swept back behind you, again, just observe what happens if you breathe into the chest. Do you feel that that widens the space in the upper back? And so you've just got 3 more breath cycles here. And as you continue to be here, I'd like you to start to notice what the sound of your own breath sounds like. And you start to tone the back of the throat and constrict the breath to find your version of Ujjayi Pranayama at this moment. And throughout our practice, the invitation is always to come to listen to the sound of the breath. Whenever the breath becomes jilted or rough, or uneven, it might be an indication that you might be doing too much. And so you can just back out of the shape just a little bit in order to come back to a calm, steady, smooth breath. If your hands are back behind you, on your next inhale, you'll start to bring the hands forward. Great. Start to push down into your hands and inhale, come up to hands and knees shape. Go ahead and remove that blanket if you'd like, and either put it off to the side or put it underneath your shins. But we're going to take about 4 slow cats and cows. And as you start to find movement here with your spine, I encourage you again to just listen to the breath. How slow, how long, how full, how smooth, how deep was the breath about a few seconds ago? And can you keep that length of the breath as you continue to move, to undulate the spine? As you take these last few cats and cows here, notice what it feels like to start the movement from the crown of the head versus the tail, or the tail versus the crown of the head. And then after this next exhalation, I encourage you to start to take 4 slow circles one way in the rib cage. And as you're circling through the ribs, you're paying very particular attention to how it feels in the side body, how that allows you to breathe, how it feels to press your hands into the floor. Notice how big of a circle you can make and what that does to the breath, especially as you round into the upper back at the completion of that circle. And after you've taken 4 circles one way, you'll go to stillness and then start to move in the opposite direction. And again, you're noticing, because you're listening just to the breath, if anything else feels like the body might wish to do that, you're listening, you're responding to that, giving yourself permission in this moment to really honor what's there. And after you've taken your 4 breaths and your 4 circles one way and then the other, you'll just come back to center and do 3 more standard cats and cows. And as you come back to this cats and cow, you're paying attention to what the spine feels like now, how the breath is moving through the body. Awesome. From here, you'll go ahead and inhale and come into that cow shape. As you exhale, curl your toes under, lift your pelvis up and back, downward facing dog. And as usual, I encourage you to keep your knees pretty bent. Soften any tension around your shoulders so your head just hangs between your arms. And then notice what happens if you keep both knees bent, but straighten one leg, and then lift all 5 toes of that same foot up and away from the floor. How does that change the stretch in the calf? And then you'll do that on the other side. So bending the opposite knee, straightening the other leg, lifting all 5 toes of that straight leg. And notice how that's impacting your breath, how that's impacting your calves. And you've got 3 more breath cycles here. So if you'd like to move a little faster, you can move a little faster. If you'd like to just be still in the shape, just be still in the shape. But you're paying attention to how the breath is moving. It's very funny. Yoga teachers talk a lot about prana, and prana is what's said to ride on our breath. It's the life force, it's our vitality, it's our energy. I also think it's the intuition and wisdom of the universe. But sometimes we have to get really quiet so that we can sense it, feel it, hear it. And so you're just checking into that for you right now. And then when you feel like you're pretty complete, we'll go ahead and come to a still neutral spot. Press down through the hands, lift up through your inner armpits, and inhale, bend your right knee. As you exhale, draw that right heel close to your butt. Inhale, lift your right knee to the sky and maybe open your hip. And see how that feels. Just breathe across the inner thigh. Keep drawing that outer left hip back. As you're ready, you'll exhale and draw the right knee back towards its mate and lower the foot towards the floor. And then you'll try that on the other side. Go ahead and bend your left knee as you breathe in. Exhale, draw the heel to your butt. And then inhale, let the knee open up towards the sky, hip opens to the sky, and just feel how that feels on the inner thigh, the back of the right leg. Awesome. Next exhale, draw the left knee to meet its mate and lower the foot towards the floor. Inhale, come forward, hands and knees. And as you exhale, lower the knees to the mat. Make sure both hands are underneath your shoulders and walk your knees towards each other. Then go ahead and send your right leg back, tuck the toes under, straighten your right leg long. Float your right leg up parallel to the floor. Keep hugging that outer right hip, or rather lift the inner right thigh up, drawing the outer right hip down. You might stay here or reach your left arm forward, but we're just going to breathe here for about 4 breath cycles. And you're pushing down into the right hand, the left knee. You're hugging your front ribs in, and you're extending out through that left pinky finger out through that right big toe. The end of your next exhalation, lower slowly the left hand and then the right knee. Make sure the knees are together. And then go ahead and extend your left leg back, tuck the toes under, straighten the leg long, and then float the left leg parallel to the floor. From here, push down through both hands, draw your tailbone back, your crown forward, and when you're ready, you might float the right arm off the floor as well. And you've got about 5 breaths here. And you're just noticing how smooth, how steady, how consistent can you let the breath be. Keep drawing front ribs in and back as you reach out through that inner left thigh, left big toe, right pinky finger. Nice job. Next exhale, lower the hand, lower the leg, press back, downward facing dog, and just see how downward facing dog feels here. Awesome. And you're going to just take 3 breaths to move around and fidget as you need to. You might just shift your pelvis to the right and notice what that does, and then shift the pelvis to the left and notice what that does. But again, you're paying attention to how the breath is moving in the body, how you're responding to what you're needing in this moment. Awesome. When you feel balance between the sides, come to stillness. Lower your knees to the mat for just a moment. Place both blocks to the upper outer corners of your mat, and I highly encourage you to place a blanket in the middle of your mat, but you choose to do what works for you. Once you feel like you have all your props set up, you'll press yourself back to downward facing dog. Okay. From here, inhale, lift your right leg up and back. As you exhale, step that right foot quietly between your hands. Bring your hands to your blocks. Inhale, reach your heart and sternum forward, lift the gaze, lift the chest, and then exhale, straighten that front leg long, shift your butt back, straighten the front leg long. There we go. And you're going to do this 4 times. So you'll inhale, come forward, reach back through the left heel as you come forward through the heart. Exhale, shift your weight back. You might peel the sole of that front foot away from the floor. And you've got 2 more of these on your own. And again, you're working with the length of your breath, letting the breath be as long, as steady, as smooth as it can be. And you're noticing what it feels like to really embody this principle that we have all the time in the world. Awesome sauce. After the 4th time, you'll press back into that modified pyramid pose and stay there for a few breaths. Make sure the blocks are underneath your shoulders or hands are underneath your shoulders. You might choose to peel the sole of the right foot up and away from the floor. If you do, keep pulling that right kneecap up. You might choose to spin your right pinky toes to the right, and if so, you're doing that from the whole top of the right thigh. But you're breathing and you're noticing what that's doing to the back of your hamstrings. You might also choose to just draw your outer right hip back towards the left and just notice what it feels like to sort of sway your hips a little bit right to left. Yep, and you've got 2 more breath cycles here, and you're just paying attention to what it feels like to be in your body. What sensations are you having? What shapes allow you to deepen your breath, and how can you allow yourself to do that? Awesome sauce. On your next in breath, let's go ahead and come to stillness if you're in movement. As you exhale, shift your weight forward, low lunge, lower the back knee all the way down to the mat. Turn the blocks up to the highest setting and start to walk your spine up to vertical. Now you can bring both hands on the center of that right thigh and just stay right here, lifting up through the spine. You might lift your left arm up and over your head. And you might choose to stay here and just find a nice stretch happening on the left side of the body. You might choose to arc a little bit towards the right so you feel a stretch happening across the front of your hip flexor, your psoas. You might even choose to lean a little bit back. But wherever you are, you're going to where you can have a fuller, deeper breath. You're noticing that you're still pushing down a lot in that right foot to the left knee. And then maybe see if you can soften any tension around your shoulders, around your neck. You've got 2 more breath cycles here, and you're just really paying attention to how the breath is moving. And then at the end of your next exhale, you'll inhale and come up. Exhale, frame the front foot with both hands. Go ahead and step back to plank pose, fallen kasana. And you're just going to stay here for 3 breaths. Pressing down through the hands, noticing what it feels like to put more weight into the knuckles of the hands, the tips of the fingers. Notice what happens if you have more weight in the wrists and which one feels better to you. And then as you're ready, you'll exhale, bend the knees, and lift the hips up and back. Downward facing dog, 3 steady breaths. And you're just giving yourself the opportunity to notice, what does it feel like to catch a breath, to catch a break? It's so strange that, we constantly, well, I feel constantly inundated by all these things I think I need to do. And yet I'm much more effective if I give myself the sense of permission and capacity to take a break. So that's what down dog is supposed to be, a resting pose. And so we'll move on. Go ahead and inhale, lift your left leg up and back. And as you exhale, quietly step that foot between your hands. Bring your hands to your blocks. And then you'll inhale and arc the heart forward and up. And exhale, shift your weight back, straighten the leg long. And you've got 4 of these. And as you just come forward and back, you're again working to let the breath be as long, as stable, as fluid as it can be. And you're just experiencing how your body is responding here and now. And just as we had on the other side, if you choose, you can peel the sole of that left foot up and away from the floor every time you go back. Just intensifies the stretch a little bit. Nice job. And after your 4th set, you'll hold in that modified pyramid pose. And when you're in that modified pyramid pose, make sure the hands are underneath the shoulders. If you've chosen to straighten the left leg completely long and peel all 10 toes up, or rather all 5 toes up and away from the floor, you might spin the left pinky toe to the left a little bit. You might sway your pelvis a little to the right and then to the left, but you're just paying attention to how this feels in your hamstrings. And as best as you can, the weight is even on the heel of the front foot and on the ball of the back foot so that you aren't overextending the hamstrings, but you're finding like this fun little engaged stretch. Awesome. And you've got 2 more breath cycles here. And you're noticing if there's tension in your mouth and your jaw, and if you can let that go. Great. Go ahead and come to stillness if you're in movement. Inhale, shift your weight forward, plant the sole of the foot on the floor if it was lifted, and exhale, lower that back knee down to the mat. Turn your blocks to the highest setting and start to walk yourself back up to vertical. And you can stay with your hands on the blocks. You can walk both hands onto the center of that left thigh. And then you might choose to stay here, just pushing in left foot, right knee. You might reach your right arm up and overhead. You might decide to take a little arc or side bend towards the left. You might even take it slightly back on a diagonal, but we're paying attention to how breath, how movement, how sensation is moving into this right side of our body. Noticing if you're tensing anything around your shoulders or your neck. And see if you can just instead find a deeper breath. And we're still pushing down into our right knee, left foot, hugging those points together to keep the low back or in its neutral position. Awesome. And you got 1 more breath cycle here. And on your next in-breath, you'll come up through center. As you exhale, go ahead and frame that front foot. Step yourself back once again to plank pose, fallen kasana. We're going to leave that blanket there for just a bit longer. And then you're just going to take 3 breaths here. Again, pay attention. Where do you feel more of the weight in your hands? And if you press more into different parts of your hands, what do you experience? Like, for instance, press into your pinky fingers. How does that feel in your shoulder blades? Press more into your index fingers and thumbs. What does that feel like in your pecs? On your next exhale, bend your knees, lift your hips up and back. Okay, this is going to be weird. You're going to step your feet forward and put the balls of your feet on your blanket. Your heels will be on your mat. And then walk your hands back to wherever you need to find yourself in a forward fold. And now, because we're on the blanket here, this is going to stretch the backs of your calves even more. So you might bend the knees and sway the hips a little right to left. You might find that your blocks are really helpful here, but you're just paying attention. You might even choose to straighten one leg and then the other, but you're noticing how that's impacting your breath. We're going to stay here about 5 breath cycles. I feel like Uttanasana is a shape that we don't often spend a lot of time in. So see if you can let the head be super heavy. If you notice if there's any crunchiness around the shoulders, can you let the head be even heavier, the arms be even heavier? And you're just pausing in your breathing and you're noticing what you notice. In what areas of life might you be able to just take a little bit more of an easy approach? How can you allow yourself to just soften a bit, let go a bit? Awesome sauce. If you're in movement, please go ahead and come to stillness. Release your hands down to the floor. And then we're going to take 4 of these. Inhale, slide your hands up, your shins halfway lift. And then exhale, slowly fold all the way in. And you've got 3 more of those. And as you do this on your own, just floating up to halfway lift and then folding back in, pay attention to how your head is working as you go into this. What do you notice happening in the neck? Specifically, as you come down, can you draw the chin into the chest just a bit so the whole spine feels long? Yep. We've got 1 more. Okay. Now this next time you come up to halfway lift, we're going to pause there. I encourage you to bend your knees as much as you need to send your pubic bone back and make your spine parallel to the floor. From here, draw one hand to one hip and the other hand to the other hip. Hug the shoulder blades onto the back body and reach your heart forward. And then inhale, bend your knees to sit for chair pose, bringing your head up to vertical. Yeah. As you exhale, just release your hands alongside your hips and then inhale, sweep your arms up alongside your ears. And then exhale, airplane them down by your hips. And you've just got 3 of these. And so this is a little bit more precarious and forcing your feet to work by being on a blanket and forcing you to pay attention to how much our calves or Achilles kind of get tight. It's ironic, sitting all day. It's not really good, I think, for most of us. And so we're just feeling what this feels like. How is the breath? Awesome sauce. And you all are doing different things with your arms, and that's great. The last time, or next time rather, that your arms are up and alongside your ears, we're going to stay here for 3 breaths. Now, as we're here for today, I'd like you to think of breathing into wherever you feel sensation and using that to expand out into your body. So you might be breathing into the chest and noticing how breathing into the chest expands more into the back body, the side ribs, the front body, the arms. You might be breathing into your abdomen, noticing what impact that has on the belly. You might be breathing into your fingertips or your nose, but you're just picking something to breathe into and using that as the epicenter to send energy, to send your awareness, your vitality everywhere else. Awesome sauce. At the end of your next exhale, the hands are going to come back down to the floor, fold forward, Uttanasana. Nice job. Inhale, halfway lift. As you exhale, start to bend your knees, plant your palms, crawl your hands forward, step your feet back, come back to downward facing dog. And at this point, you can totally say sayonara to that blanket. And then I want you to just notice how it feels in your calves now in this down dog. Do you feel there's more breath? There's more space? Okay, we're going to add on. Inhale, sweep your right leg up and back. As you exhale, step that right foot quietly between your hands. Awesome. Spin your back foot to the floor for warrior one. And then inhale, come all the way up to vertical. Awesome. And once we find ourselves up in warrior one, arms alongside our ears, we'll take a big inhalation. As you exhale, airplane the arms and straighten your front leg. And we'll just do 3 of these. So inhale, bending your front knee, reaching your arms forward and up. And then exhale, straightening the front leg, lowering the arms. And as you take these next 2 on your own, just as we did in chair, you might choose to play with how your arms are getting up and over your head. You might just do this plain, sagittal plane movement. Awesome, sauce. And then the next time you're in warrior one with both arms up, the front knee bent, we're going to stay here for 3 breaths. And as you continue to press into the back outer edge of your pinky toe, so that's the left pinky toe and your right big toe and your right heel, I want you to see how it feels to really breathe into your chest, how it feels to really breathe into your ribs. To notice how just expanding the breath can change how the rest of the body works in concert. We're allowing ourselves to tap into this very real possibility that by changing from the inside, we can impact things in the outer world, the outer shape. You've got 1 more breath cycle here. At the end of your next exhale, straighten your front leg, lower your hands alongside your hips. Now bring your hands to your hips for a moment. Step your back foot in about a foot or so, maybe more, depending upon your leg length. Now, with your hands on your hips, inhale, draw your shoulder blades back together, lift your heart up. And as you exhale, we're going to hinge forward halfway. Now, once you're parallel to the floor, you might want a block, and you'll put that block underneath your left hand, and you'll keep your right hand on your hip. Now, if you'd like, you're going to just lift that spine parallel to the floor. If it's not, pull that outer right hip back a lot, and you might choose to stay right here. You might press down through that left hand and start to turn your left ear towards the floor. And you're going to rotate across the abdomen if you're doing that while you're still pulling that outer right hip back, drawing the outer left thigh back. And you're just paying attention to the breath. And we've got 3 more steady breath cycles here. So if you choose to open that right arm up to the sky, you might notice what that feels like. And then I want you to pay attention to what's happening to your neck. What small adjustments can you make in the head to give yourself a better sense of breath in your body, maybe more stretch or sensation across the backs of your shoulder blades and your ribs. Nice job. At the end of your next exhalation, if that right hand is lifted, lower it down. Awesome. Bring both hands to both blocks. And now you're in pyramid pose proper. So some of you will choose to stay right here. Some of you will lift your front foot up and away from the floor. Some of you might spin your whole right leg to the right. And see what that does as you continue to lift the outer left hip back. But again, you're moving with intention. Where do you experience more of the breath surging through you in a way that's curious, in a way that's interesting, in a way that's fulfilling? I think very often, at least for myself, the breath that I'm experiencing surging through my body sometimes isn't always pleasant. When I'm in a state of stress or anxiety, the breath surging through my body doesn't feel so good. But a slow, deep stretch or a peaceful walk or some time in the bed sleeping, those things do. All right. If you've changed your foot, bring it back to center. Inhale, bend your front knee. Go ahead and plant your hands on the mat and step back, downward facing dog. From here, we're going to go ahead and inhale forward into plank pose, Palankasana. Option to stay right here for 3 breaths or to shift your weight forward and do a little push-up. Do whatever works for you. And then at the end of your 3rd breath, downward facing dog it is. And in this down dog, notice if you wish to be still or if there's any part of you that wants to wiggle and move around. And you're just following where the impetus, the impulse from inside of you is coming and allowing the mind to just sort of go along for the ride. Great. Okay, if you're in movement, let's come to stillness and we'll try the other side. Inhale, lift your left leg up and back. As you exhale, quietly step that foot between your hands. Once the foot is there, spin your right foot to the floor and inhale, come on up for Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. And just as we did before, you're going to take 4 little pulses with the breath. And we're moving as mindfully with the breath as we can. So we'll inhale with the arms up and overhead. And then we exhale and straighten the front leg and lower the arms. And just as we did before, you might choose to do 2 with the arms moving in the sagittal plane. And then you might choose to do 2 with the arms moving in maybe the coronal plane. And you're just paying attention. How is the breath moving through your body? Awesome sauce. And after you've taken 4, we're going to come right back up into Virabhadrasana 1. And we're going to allow ourselves to expand from the inside. So we're stretching from inside. We're allowing our internal compass to become a greater sort of compass for us. Greater impulse, greater strength by just noticing where we want to breathe on the inside, focusing our attention there, and noticing how that impacts the external shape. Awesome sauce. Take your last breath cycle here. At the end of your next exhalation, you'll lower your hands, straighten the front leg. Go ahead and bring your hands to your hip and step that back foot in a bit. Draw the heart forward, the shoulder blades back. Inhale, lift the chest. And then exhale, you'll start to hinge forward at your hips, coming to a 90-degree angle. At this point, your right hand will come to the right block. Continue to draw your outer left hip back, press into your left big toe mound. And you might stay right here with the spine parallel to the floor. Press down into the right hand and start to turn your right cheek and ear towards the floor. And then you might look towards the left. And you might just continue to stay here, drawing that outer left hip back. You might start to reach your left arm, the top arm up. And we've got about 3 breath cycles here. So I do encourage you to notice what happens if you play with the alignment of your head. It's very interesting how sometimes it feels like you have to tuck your chin to your chest a little bit or lean your head back or lift your ear away from the floor. But you're trying to find that spot where it feels like the breath just opens and it expands. Awesome sauce. At the end of your next exhale, you'll simply lower that left hand back to the floor. Both hands come to the blocks. And we're in pyramid pose proper. Some of you will stay right here, spine parallel-ish to the floor. Some of you will peel the sole of that left foot up and away from the floor. You might spin the left toes, whole left thigh to the left. Yep. You might just notice what it feels like to make sure the weight is evenly distributed between the feet. So sometimes the weight can shift back to that left leg. So see what it feels like to make sure you're still pressing, that right leg. Make sure you're still pressing in the left heel and the right foot evenly. Awesome sauce. Great. And we've got one more breath cycle here. Where can you soften? Where can you allow just a little bit less effort? Okay. On your next in-breath, go ahead and come to stillness. If you're not, plant that foot on the floor, shift your weight forward, plant your palms on the mat, and step back, downward facing dog. Great. From here, let's go ahead and inhale forward into plank pose. Okay, we've got 3 options here. Option 1 is to stay in plank. Option 2 is to do a push-up. Option 3 is to do a push-up and go into up dog, keeping your toes curled under. And you're just breathing. And then when you're ready, you're back to downward facing dog. Awesome, sauce. And just 2 more breaths. If you need child's pose for a bit, go rest in child's pose before we continue, but we're just noticing what aspects of our life might be more enjoyable if we allowed ourselves to use rest as a form of resistance. I came across this concept a while ago, and then I came across it again this week, and I just love this idea of rest as resistance. And those of you that are in child's pose, feel free to stay there as long as you'd like. Those of us in down dog, we're going to go ahead and move on. So let's inhale, lift your right leg up and back. As you exhale, quietly step that right foot between your hands. Spin your back foot to the floor and come up for Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2. Now, just as we've been doing before, we're going to work with pulsing. So as you inhale, you'll straighten your front leg, lift both arms up and overhead. And as you exhale, you'll bend the front knee and return back to Warrior 2. And you've got 3 more of those. Inhaling, straightening the front leg, lifting the arms, and exhaling, bending the front knee. Awesome. 2 more. And you're just seeing how long, how steady, how smooth you can make the breath as you do this. This is our last one. Awesome sauce. The next time you're in Warrior 2, we're going to stay here for 3 breaths. And I encourage you to close your eyes. And I want you to allow the breath to enter wherever it feels like it would be most needed in your body, and let it expand outwards from there. You're still pushing down to that front foot and hugging up the outer right hip back, but you're just allowing the breath to expand. So if you breathe into the chest, for instance, notice how that impacts the shoulders. If the eyes are closed, gently open the gaze once again. Inhale, straighten your front leg long. As you exhale, reach forward, out, and down, and bring that right hand to a block, shin, or floor, either inside or outside of your front leg, depending upon what feels good to you. And then I want you to take a few breaths here to move around to find a triangle pose that feels interesting to you. So sometimes it feels really fun to me to draw that outer right hip back. Sometimes it feels nice to squeeze that top hip, that left hip, and it gives me a stretch across my QL. Sometimes it feels good to open the arms and sort of lean my heart back. Sometimes it feels good to lower that top arm and just do a half bind behind the back, but you're paying attention to what feels good. Where do you allow the breath to deepen? Do you need to drop the right ear to the right shoulder? Do you want to lift the right heel away from the floor? And you just got 2 more breaths, and you're paying attention to how subtle movements can help impact and shape the breath. Awesome sauce. At the end of your next exhale, lower that left hand to the floor. Start to turn to your left and square both feet to the short edge of your mat. Now, once you're here, you might grab, so we're going to Prasarita Padottanasana. There we go. Now, once you're here, you might just allow yourself to hang between your legs. You might grab opposite elbows. You might walk the hands forward. And if you feel like your hamstrings are already pretty open, start to walk your feet in a little bit closer towards each other so that the spine can just hang. And you're paying attention to how the weight is in your feet. I encourage you to notice what's happening in the neck and shoulders. Sometimes it feels like it bunches up just a little bit there. And almost like, when you're cooking chicken or turkey for Thanksgiving, how can you like release that neck? You're just pausing and you're breathing. Awesome sauce. And you've just got 2 more breath cycles here. And as you're here for these last 2, notice what it feels like to breathe into your pelvis. Sometimes it feels like I'm like blossoming my buttocks here, and it feels really nice in the abdomen and the pelvic floor and the hips and the thighs and the low back. Awesome sauce. Next in-breath, let's go ahead and halfway lift. As you exhale, turn to face the top of your mat, low lunge. Go ahead and step yourself back to downward facing dog. Now you have the option to stay right here in down dog. You have the option to cycle through. You have the option to rest in child's pose. You're following what feels best to your body, to your breath, to your being. And the funny thing is, it's like, even if you choose to do something now or choose not to do something now, that may be a no for now, but it's not a no for forever. It's just what's happening right in this moment. Okay, and as we're ready, we'll switch sides. So let's go ahead and inhale, lift your left leg up and back. As you exhale, quietly step that foot between your hands. Spin the right foot to the floor for warrior 2, and then bring yourself up into Virabhadrasana 2. And just as we did before, 4 little pulses with the breath. You'll inhale, straighten your front leg, reach both arms up. And then you'll exhale, bend the front knee, open both arms out. And you're just following your breath, inhaling and straightening and lifting. And exhaling and bending and settling into the shape. And it's interesting because warrior 2, actually, honestly, is one of those fun poses you don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about. Okay, this should be our 4th set. So the next time you're in warrior 2, we're going to stay there. There is the option to keep the eyes open. There is also the option to let the gaze settle down or close inward, but you're going to take 3 breaths. I think warrior 2 is supposed to be a symbol for letting us be warriors in our life, but like the most skilled warriors aren't the ones that are willy-nilly just running around wasting their energy. They really know how to focus. They know how to direct their awareness and their attention. They're centered, they're grounded, they're strong, and they're stable. Being connected to our breath and our sense of being, our intentions, our vitality, I think allows us to be those warriors in our lives. All right, if your gaze is closed, gently open it. Inhale, straighten your front leg long. And as you exhale, reach forward, out, and down, Utthita Trikonasana. Again, pay mindful attention to what's happening in that left leg, making sure the kneecap pulls up. You're pressing into your left big toe mound. And then just as we did on the first side, how do you make this more curious to you? Is it drawing the outer left hip back? Is it engaging the right glute, pressing into the right pinky toe? Is it tucking your chin to your chest, maybe dropping the left ear towards the left shoulder, maybe leaning back a little bit, letting the heart open? Maybe it's lifting that top arm up or letting it come back behind you in a half bind, but you're paying attention to what feels expansive to you, what allows you to have a sense of curiosity, a sense of wonder. Nice work. You got about 2 more breath cycles here, and you're just paying attention to how this is for you on this side. And then at the end of your next exhalation, you'll slowly lower that right hand to the floor. Start to walk to the right side of your mat so your feet are parallel to the short edges of your mat. If you need to walk your feet in, walk your feet in. And then you're in Prasarada Padottanasana. And you're choosing whichever variation works for you. So some of you might choose to hold on to the ankles. Some of you might keep your hands firmly on the floor. Some of you might walk the hands back between the legs or forward away from the pelvis, but you're just observing and noticing how you can find length, how you can let the head be super heavy to help traction out the spine, how you can soften any unnecessary tension in the body. And ironically, sometimes that means that you might need to actually lift your shoulder blades up and away from the floor to let your neck feel like it has space. And sometimes it might mean that you just need to let the shoulder blades drop down. So you're just paying attention to what that feels like for you. Awesome sauce. You got one more breath cycle here. Great. Very gently, you'll bring your hands underneath your shoulders and you'll inhale, halfway lift. As you exhale, turn to face the top of your space. You can go ahead and step yourself back, downward facing dog. Again, option to cycle through or not. And then we'll rest for a brief moment in child's pose before we come into our final series of shapes. And now once you find yourself back in child's pose, just take a moment to check in, to notice how the breath is moving now. You know, it's said very often that what's happening in the breath, it's very reflective of what's happening in the mind. So just notice if you notice anything happening in the mind. Okay. And you've got 2 more breath cycles here. Awesome. The end of your next inhalation, or your exhalation rather, you'll inhale and come up to hands and knees, and then exhale back to downward facing dog. Now, big word of warning, we are going to go into pigeon pose with a quad stretch. So if you would rather just not do pigeon pose, you can do something else like figure 4, or you can just lay on one of your sides and do a quad stretch. Okay, so from downward facing dog, inhale, lift your right leg up and back. As you exhale, draw your right knee forward, plant your right shin on the floor, and let your right toes point back towards your left hip. Now from here, before you go any further, I want you to push down into your hands, push down into your front shin, push down into your back knee. So that back knee probably needs, back toes probably need to be curled over, and you're going to see if you can get a lot of lift and lightness. And if you're happy as a clam here, just pushing into the right shin, reaching back through that inner left thigh, you're going to stay right here. You might choose to bend your back knee and reach around and grab your back foot with your left hand. And if you do that, sometimes it really helps to come forward just a little bit. It changes the stretch on the front of the hip. For me, I find it actually targets it in the quad versus being in my knee or in my hip. So you're just paying attention and you're breathing. And we're pushing down into that front shin and we're pushing down into that back knee. And you just have 4 more breath cycles here. And once you feel like you've had enough of that, you'll gently release that back foot. And you might walk your hands forward and take a sleeping pigeon. You might stay upright in your pigeon, but you're again following your breath. You're noticing what it feels like to be in your body in this moment. How can we allow the things that happen automatically, that are gifts to us that happen automatically, to really be more noticed, to be more cherished, to be more appreciated? The breath is one of those things that, you know, until we get sick or have a sinus infection or a cough or asthma or something like that, we don't really notice that just being able to breathe fully is really a wonderful thing. We've got 2 more breath cycles here. At the end of your next exhalation, you'll start to walk your hands back underneath your shoulders. You'll tuck your toes under and lift your hips up and back to downward facing dog. And when you get there, you might choose to slowly pedal through the feet. You might choose to stay still. You might lift one leg up and back and do that dog at a hydrant thing. But you're just paying attention to how it feels, how the breath moves more freely through your body as a result of some of the choices that you make. And when you're ready, you'll go ahead and try all that on the other side. So you'll inhale and lift your left leg up and back, and then you'll draw your left shin bone towards the mat in front of you, left toes towards your right thigh. You might crawl your right foot back so that you can then push into your front shin, push into your back knee, and try to lift up as much as you can in the torso. And yeah, Barbara, that's good. Like sometimes turning to the left finds a fun stretch across the front of the right diaphragm, right psoas. And you might stay there and just breathe. Other option is to potentially keep pushing the front shin, push into back knee, bend back knee, and grab back foot. And we're holding that with our right hand. And again, it's one of those strange things, but for some reason, tilting my heart forward just a little bit really allows me to target it in my quadricep, and it's not in my knee and it's not in my hip. So you're just pausing and you're breathing, and you're pausing and you're breathing. And after you've taken a couple breath cycles there, you may choose to gently release that back foot. And then you might either stay upright in pigeon or crawl your arms forward and take a sleeping pigeon. And you just got a few breath cycles here. How can we allow every breath to create a sense of nurturance to ourselves? And not because we have to force anything, but more so because we just get the heck out of the way and let it happen. All right, we've got one more breath cycle here. The end of your exhale, you'll bring your hands underneath your shoulders. You'll start to tuck your back toes under and lift your hips up and back, downward facing dog. And just as you did before, maybe you fidgeted around, maybe you took the dog at a hydrant, maybe you did none of the above. And again, you're just noticing what allows you to breathe a bit more easily. Can you release any tension around your neck, around your jaw, around your shoulders? Awesome sauce. All right, let's go ahead and inhale, come forward, hands and knees. Put your butt down and swivel your legs around in front of you. However that has to make sense to you. Okay. Great. So we're going to end with just a few seated postures. So let's start by bending our left knee and crossing our left foot to the outside edge of our right thigh. And then you can choose to stay here with that right leg straight, or you might swim your right foot towards the outside edge of your left hip. Now, this is one where I want you to really pay attention to you. Do you need to lift your butt up and move it a little bit to the right so that both sit bones feel even? Do you wish to choose to rotate towards the right? Or do you want to choose to rotate to the left? You're doing whatever feels best to you, but you're going to take about 4 breath cycles there. And you're just paying attention to what feels like it invites more expansiveness in the body. So we're starting from inside and allowing that to radiate out versus trying to impose something in. And then you're noticing where you can soften. You're noticing where you can just allow things to just release, to open, to relax, to yield. And after your next exhalation, you'll gently inhale and unwind. And from here, if that right leg is bent, go ahead and straighten it out again. And then we're going to bring our left foot to the inside edge of our right thigh for Janushirshasana. And you might need to remove any flesh from underneath your buttocks so your sit bones are again still flat on the floor. then we're going to start to turn a little bit more to the space between our legs. Bring your right hand to the floor, and then inhale, lift your left arm up and overhead. And then a little exhale, a little side bend towards the right. And you might need to bring the right hand outside of the right leg. It might need to go inside. It really is based on you, and you're just breathing. So we're not necessarily trying to get our head to our knee, even though this is called revolved head to knee. You're focusing more on finding space on the left side, space between the left hips, the left ribs, noticing what it feels like to breathe into your left rib cage, to soften your right shoulder, to breathe into your left shoulder, your left neck region. And you might find that that right elbow naturally just came to touch the floor, mostly because you were just trying to breathe, trying to open, trying to expand. You let the breath expand it versus letting the shape, or rather trying to force yourself into a shape. And you got one more breath cycle here. As you're ready, you'll inhale and sweep that left arm up, and then bring the spine up to vertical. And then we'll start to square our shoulders over our right leg. Hands can come alongside the right thigh. They might come on blocks, and we're just going to go forward for a version of Janu Shirshasana. And again, you're just paying attention to what is happening in the head. Do you need to tuck the chin towards the neck a little bit to lengthen the back of the neck? Does it feel good to just let your head drop forward? Are you feeling breath and spaciousness come to the low back on the left side? You're just paying attention. Do you feel stuff in the shoulder blades? Is there tension in the jaw? Or can you invite in a deeper sense of just presence, of patience, of breath? Awesome sauce. Take your last breath cycle here. And then you'll start to walk your hands back towards your pelvis. You'll walk your spine up to center. Extend your left leg forward to meet your right leg. Close your eyes for a moment and sit in Dandasana, and just notice if you notice anything between the sides. And then when you're ready, you'll try the other side. So started with the left leg. So you'll bend the right knee. You'll cross the right leg outside of the left leg. You might choose to keep that left leg straight, or you might tuck the left foot outside of the right hip. You might need to lift your butt up and slide your butt a little bit towards the left. And then you've got your choice for twist. So you might choose to do an open twist towards the left. You might choose to do a closed twist towards the right. But again, you're paying attention to how the breath is. Continue to sit tall through the spine. And then notice where the breath wants to go, where the breath feels like it needs to go. And throughout it all, see if we can keep the heart open. If we can keep the head lifted. It's very interesting that sometimes where our prana, where our life force, where the universe wants to be sending us isn't always in alignment with our thoughts or feelings about where we should be going. But how can we trust a little bit more in that inner knowing and that thing that's naturally unwinding and unfolding? And you've got one more breath cycle here. As you're ready, you'll gently inhale and unwind the spine. If the left leg was bent, go ahead and straighten it out again. And then let's bring the sole of our right foot into the inside edge of our left foot. And again, that left foot is active. The toes are pulling up, the kneecaps pulling up, and we're going to turn our torso so we're more between the V of our legs. Then go ahead and plant that left hand. It might be on the inside or the outside edge of the left leg. Inhale, sweep your right arm up and overhead. And then exhale, start to side bend towards the left. And again, it doesn't have to start off big. Just gently starting small and expanding the breath will gradually expand the shape, because you're allowing the pliancy to come from within. You're allowing your own sense of resilience and strength to come from within. And so you're just pausing and you're breathing and you're pausing and you're breathing. And all of our shapes are very unique for us, and that's awesome. And then on your next in-breath, we'll go ahead and reach that right arm up. Come back up to center. Square your shoulders and chest over your left leg. Hands might be on blocks framing that left leg or on the floor. And then you'll start to hinge forward here. And you might find that you want to just round in through the spine. You might find that you actually do want to hinge and keep the spine straight. Pay attention to what's happening in the head and neck and shoulder region. Does it feel good to just let the head drop and to feel that sense of stretch across the back of the body? Does it feel good to sort of keep the head more in alignment with the tail and keep it more as one long line? You just got 3 breath cycles here. And you're just noticing what you notice. Awesome. Sauce. The end of your next exhale, gently release the hands and start to walk yourself up to center. Once you're vertical, release that right leg long so it's next to the left. And this would be a great time to start to cover your body. We've got 2 more shapes and then we'll be done. So if you want to cover with a sweater or something like that, or socks, that would be great. And then you're going to make your way onto your backs. As you come onto your backs, highly encourage you to make sure blocks, blankets, any props that you might want for Shavasana are easily accessible. And the first thing to notice when you do make contact with the ground is just to notice what it feels like to make contact with the ground. How does the back body feel? Spent a lot of time in forward folds today. So how does it feel now to have the body not folded, not in flexion, but just in a neutral position? Okay, if you're happy there, by all means, please stay here. Otherwise, let's bend our knees and plant our feet firmly on the floor. Make sure your feet are about hip distance apart. Hands are alongside your hips. And then you're going to just take 2 little bridges. So you'll inhale, push up. And you'll exhale and come down. Yep, and you'll do that again. And then you'll come down, and then we'll take this 3rd one and you'll hold it. And when you come up, I do encourage you to notice, do you want to walk the shoulders closer together? Do you wish to interlace the hands or keep the palms on the floor? Notice what it feels like to play with the weight in your feet. Do you want to press more weight into the balls of the feet? Do you need to press more weight into the big toe mounds or the pinky toe mounds? How does it feel to allow the inner thighs to come more towards each other? What does it feel like to press more weight into the upper outer arms? To draw weight into the back of the head? To draw the sternum towards your chin? How can you expand the breath by simply becoming curious about moving from the inside out? And you've got about 2 more breath cycles here. You might choose to now breathe behind the shoulder blades, behind the heart, to notice what that does to your experience of the shape. And then once you feel complete, you'll untuck your hands, untuck your shoulders, bring your bum back to the floor and pause. And you'll just take 1 to 2 breath cycles here, letting your body just settle. You were just in an extension, and how did that feel? Great. From here, let's go ahead and draw 1 knee to the chest and the other knee to the chest. You can either bring your hands to the inside edges of your thighs and grab the outside edges of your feet and draw the soles of the feet together for a Supta Baddha Konasana position, or you might choose to take Happy Baby. But I encourage you to take whichever one allows you to feel more breath, which allows you to feel more curiosity. I honestly think that when we have a sense of curiosity in our life, or passion, or intrigue, or like forward moving action, it's just breath. It's the prana moving in us, helping guide us. And so, how can we allow ourselves to tap into that physically so that, when it pops up, when we're at work, when we're in a relationship, when we're out and about in the world, that we can recognize it as being like sort of a messenger, a sign, if you will. It's helping direct us. All right. So if you're moving around in happy baby, feel free to keep doing that. If there's anything else that feels like your body would love to explore that, by all means do that. But when you feel complete, we are going to make our way to our final resting pose. And so as you make your way to your final resting pose, you might choose to cover the body with blankets, or maybe even just cover the abdomen and the pelvis with a blanket. Well, that is part of the body. You might choose to be in Supta Baddha Konasana or Shavasana. You choose whatever feels best to you. Okay. And once you find yourself in your final shape, I encourage you to take the first few breath cycles there to really get comfortable, to make sure that it feels like your body can settle because it feels fully supported and unencumbered. Great. And so we're going to start with sort of a guided relaxation. So I want you to start at the crown of your head and just notice that you can just allow that to be easeful, free of any tension. And then we'll go to the eyes and let the eyeballs just sort of drop into the sockets. See if you can release any tension in the mouth, across the throat. Drop any tension in the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, the fingertips. Notice if there's any holding around the rib cage, the heart space. If there's any tension in the abdomen. Relax across the pelvis, the hips. Draw a sense of softness into the knees, the shins, the calves, the ankles, and the soles of the feet, the toes. Now, every time your body breathes in, allow your awareness to travel from the tips of your toes, the soles of your feet, upwards towards the crown of your head. And every time the body breathes out, allow the awareness to travel back down. And the intention is to just sort of be a passive witness to the breath as you direct your awareness up and down the body. And every time you breathe in and the awareness travels upwards, the body is being restored, renewed, nourished. And every time the body breathes out and the awareness travels back downward, you're letting go of anything you no longer need to carry, anything you no longer wish to carry. And so you'll do this Kriya, this energizing technique on your own for the next few moments. Just breathing up and down the body. You might begin to observe that as you continue to soften and let go, the awareness might travel higher up, maybe reaching the abdomen, maybe reaching the heart, maybe even reaching the crown of the head. And you'll just continue on your own for a few more minutes, and I'll let you know when it's time to come out. Begin to return your awareness. As you come back, just take a moment to check in. Let go of the Kriya if you have not already. And just observe. Notice what you notice in this moment. If there's any part of you that longs to linger in this shape, in this state for a few more moments or a few more breaths, by all means, please hang out here. When you are ready to move on, you'll allow small movement to enter into your physical form. From there, start to make your way over to one of your sides. And then slowly you'll bring yourself up to a tall, comfortable seat. And when you are vertical, take your time and allow yourself to set yourself up well. So really to elevate your bum on a block or on a blanket. And then when you feel fully elevated, make sure that your head is over your shoulders are over your hips. See if you can soften any tension around the eyes, the face, the mouth. And we'll complete with just 3 rounds of Nadi Shodhana. So go ahead and take your left hand and tuck your index finger into your thumb and let that either rest facing up or facing down on your left thigh. And then your right hand, you can bring your ring finger to the outside edge of your left nostril and your thumb to the outside edge of your right nostril. Go ahead and exhale all the breath from your mouth. Go ahead and close the right nostril and inhale just through the left. Top of your inhalation, you'll close the left nostril and exhale slowly through the right. When you need to, you'll draw the breath back in through the right. And at the top of the inhalation, you'll close the right nostril and exhale out through the left. And that counts as 1 round. And you'll continue this horseshoe pattern a few more times on your own. And you're just paying attention to how smooth, how long, how full your breath is in this moment. Trying to allow yourself to follow its impulse, its lead. There is no rush. Take your time. Once you've completed your 3 rounds, you'll simply release your right hand. And you'll just take a few moments to breathe. Quietly listening inward to whatever you happen to notice, either in the breath, in the body, the heart, the spirit. Spine stays tall, heart stays open. Continue to breathe, to notice where you can soften as you just sit with yourself. There's nothing that you have to do, just stay attentive and curious about what you notice happening. Very gently guide your hands to heart center, Anjali Mudra. You can also just plant your hands on the heart if that feels good to you too. We'll complete our practice with a collective breath, followed by a collective Om. Gently exhale all the breath from your mouth. Take a big breath in. Big breath out. Inhale for Om. Join if you'd like. Draw your thumbs to your third eye. May our thoughts be clear. Draw your thumbs to your lips. May our words be kind. And draw your thumbs to your heart center. May our hearts be open. The light within me honors and salutes the light, the breath within each of you. Namaste.